Thank you everyone so much for waiting while we get these technical difficulties figured out here. We were not quite able to log in right away, but it looks like everything should be working now. We are going to be doing the Affordable Care Act for navigators and CACs next with OCI. So once everyone has been able to join, then we will go ahead and get started.
Shelly said she's trying to join right now.
Yeah. Hopefully it'll be just a couple more minutes, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience.
Elizabeth, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry,
Fantastic.
folks. Oh, technology. So I think we're ready to go then?
I believe that we are, yes.
Okay. So let's go to the next slide, please. The Office of the Commissioner of Insurance, or OCI's, mission statement provides the context of which OCI's goals and strategies are formulated, depicts the scope and direction for our agency, and provides the framework within which decisions will be made regarding programs, proposed legislation, and rules and administrative goals. OCI's mission statement was updated in 2021 to reflect the modern insurance industry and the current goals of the office. The mission statement is core to OCI's operations. Next slide, please. The definition of a navigator is that of an individual or an entity that supervises or employs an individual who either performs any activities and duties related to the navigator program on behalf of the Federal Exchange and who receives funding to perform such functions on behalf of the Federal Exchange. An individual navigator does not include a person acting as an insurance intermediary. We will dive into the specific licensing requirements for a navigator and certified applicant counselor, in the next few slides. Next slide, please. A certified application counselor, also known as a CAC, is a non-navigator assister who has been designated by or working on behalf of the Federal Exchange. Along with any federal training requirements, CACs are required to meet the training and examination requirements established for navigators, including the 16 hours of pre-licensing training and successful passage of the written examination. Once the requirements are met, a CAC is not licensed by OCI, but a certification form must be submitted by the organization the CAC is working for. Next slide, please. This is how the landing page looks from the for information about navigators and CACs. By clicking on the plus signs towards the right-hand side of the page, a drop-down opens up and information is provided about the requirements needed prior to the exam, the study materials for the examination, links to sign up for the examination, and fingerprinting, FAQs, and other important and helpful information. This will always be your go-to page for information and procedures about becoming a licensed navigator or CAC. Next slide, please. The requirements to become a navigator are the following. You have to be at least 18 years of age, a resident of Wisconsin, completion of the pre-licensing training, completion of the federal training requirements, passing the written examination, fingerprinting and background check, and of being affiliated with a navigator entity. Any pre-licensing training such as this ensures a uniform, basic knowledge for those assisting customers. Next slide, please. So we've come right away to our first polling question. Which of the following is not a navigator licensing requirement? A, be fingerprinted and receive a background check. B, be appointed with an insurance company. C, be a resident of Wisconsin. Or D, be affiliated with a navigator entity. I'll give everybody a couple of minutes here, or a couple of seconds here, sorry. So again, the answer to this question would be B. You do not have to be appointed with an insurance company. Next slide, please. Agents that hold an active resident license with the Accident and Health Line of Authority and complete the Wisconsin and federal training to be a navigator may apply to be licensed as a navigator. However, an agent cannot have an active company appointment of any kind with a health insurance company and cannot receive commission from that health insurance company to act as a navigator. Agents must be certified by the Federal Exchange as a navigator and be affiliated with one of the entities that receive a federal navigator grant. Next slide, please. Here are some of the initial requirements a navigator needs in order to become licensed in the state of Wisconsin. As I give you a moment to review these requirements, I remind you again that all of this information can be found on our websites with links that will help you sign up for the exam, submit the fingerprinting, and also to submit the electronic application. Next slide, please. Here are the requirements for a navigator to renew their license. If a license is revoked for failing to pay fees or not obtaining the continuing education credits, you would have the ability to regain the license by completing those such requirements noted in the slide. Next slide, please. Individuals working in settings such as a federally qualified health center, hospitals, healthcare providers, social service agencies, local health departments, and even Indian Health Services who do the following must be registered with OCI. Those who help consumers fill out electronic and paper applications to establish eligibility for the federal exchange and public assistance programs, and those who help consumers enroll in coverage on the federal exchange. A certified application counselor is asked to complete the same initial pre-licensing requirements as a navigator, including the 16 hours of pre-licensing training and successful passage of the written exam. These requirements are in addition to any federal training requirements. Entities employing one or more non-navigator assisters are required to provide the Commissioner's Office with a list of all certified application counselors that it employs, supervises, or is affiliated with once the individuals are authorized by the Federal Exchange to provide the assistance. Entities employing, supervising, or affiliating with specific application counselors, certified application counselors, assume legal responsibility for the acts of those certified application counselors. Next slide, please. Although similar in base knowledge requirements, CACs are held to a different standard than the navigators, but are still expected to be neutral and be informed in order to provide a consumer with the best possible experience in choosing their health care. So again, these are some of the requirements that CACs may or may not have to go through in order to become certified and ready. Next slide, please. Enrollment into a qualified health plan on the federal market exchange. Navigators and CACs can refer consumers to insurers or licensed agents if consumers are interested in the products off of the federal exchange. These would be without the advanced premium tax credit or assistance, but may in the end be more affordable for persons who are not eligible for the perks of the marketplace. Permitted activities are conducting public education activities to raise awareness of qualified health plans within the federal exchange, distribute fair and impartial information concerning enrollment in a QHP through the federal exchange, and the availability of premium tax credits and cost sharing reductions that may be available. Explain to consumers that may purchase health plans how the federal exchange works or how being off the federal exchange works. Make consumers aware that plans are available in the outside market and that they may want to talk with a licensed health insurance agent about health insurance options. Facilitate enrollment in a QHP plan through the federal exchange. Outline information that a consumer will need to have available when applying for coverage through the federal exchange. Providing that information will then allow the consumer to access the federal exchange either at their home or a computer terminal provided by the navigator. Explain to the consumer the following information: their potential eligibility for public governmental programs, how the federal health insurance premium tax credit and cost sharing reductions work, and their risks, if any, for use of those health insurance premium tax credits. Describe the features and benefits of health coverage in general terms, including cost sharing mechanisms like deductibles, co-pays, or coinsurance, and how these work or affect the consumer. Also, what a summary of benefits document is and where to locate that document and relevant cost sharing provisions within the information on the from the QHPs. Explain how to find information about provider networks and specifically describe the different metal tiers such as bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, and how the benefits may change at different metal tiers based upon the consumer's income. Lastly, provide a referral for an individual to an appropriate state agency or federal agency who has a grievance, complaint, or question regarding their health plan, coverage, or determination under such plan or coverage. Next slide, please. Navigators are to be neutral providers of information, a valued resource in a complex field. Neutrality. The hope is to guide or navigate health insurance terms, networks, costs, and a guide to a consumer so that they can make an informed decision on health insurance balancing affordability and tolerance of risk. Some prohibited activities are receiving compensation from an insurer, stop loss insurance, or a third party administrator, providing any information related to enrollment or other insurance products not offered in the Federal Exchange, make or cause to be made false or leading misstatements, provide advice comparing health insurance benefit plans that may be better or for worse for the customer or employer, recommend a particular health benefit plan or insurer, or advise consumers or employers regarding a particular insurer or health benefit plan selection. And lastly, engage in any fraudulent, deceptive, or dishonest acts or unfair methods of competition. An individual or entity acting in violation of, of the law's provisions may be subject to an administrative action, including restitution and limitation or revocation of licensure or registration. All licensees need to comply with the post breach notification requirements unless they are subject to HIPAA. Next slide, please. Here is a breakdown of the Navigator exam. This slide provides you with a line-by-line comparison of what sections the questions from the exam derive from. These are the areas of contents that you will need to focus on. There will not be questions on the exam, for example, like the history of health insurance, as they are just not relevant. OCI expects all individuals who are guiding and assisting Wisconsin consumers on the complex matters of health insurance to understand this material and provide the best support possible to those they are helping, as that is what they expect from you. All of these tools can be found in the Navigator Guide. Next slide, please. This is again just a summary of the information a candidate can find on our website surrounding the requirements needed and how to register for the exam. Next slide, please. The 2025 open enrollment is the annual timeframe during which consumers can purchase individual health plans either on or off Federal Exchange. The open enrollment period goes from November 1st, 2024 through January 15th, 2025. Plans sold during open enrollment would have an effective date of January 1st the following year if purchased before December 15th, 2024. Any plans sold after December 15th would have the earliest effect 1st, 2025. And outside of the open enrollment period, a person generally can enroll in a health insurance plan only if they qualify for a special enrollment period or called a SEP. Next slide, please. A special enrollment period is the time outside of the yearly and open enrollment period when you can sign up for health insurance. A consumer may qualify for a SEP if they have had certain life events, including losing health coverage, moving, getting married, having a baby, or adopting a child. Depending on the special enrollment period type, a consumer may have 60 days before or 60 days following the qualified event to enroll in such a plan. So again, some of the examples are losing existing health coverage, including job-based, individual, or student plans, turning 26 and losing coverage through a parent's plan, getting married or divorced, having a baby or adopting a child, a death in the family, moving to a different zip code or county, or a student moving to or from the place that they attend school. Next slide, please. So our next polling question is the following. Special enrollment periods are available for individuals when they A, are no longer eligible for Medicaid, B, receive a promotion at work, C, find a plan that they like better, or D, wish to change their doctors. So we'll give you a minute on that. So the answer here is A. They are no longer eligible for Medicaid is um, the one option in this particular slide when they would be able, or excuse me, eligible for an SEP. Next slide, please. So we did review some of this information yesterday in the slides. We have a very competitive individual health insurance market with 14 insurers offering plans on the exchange in 2024. On-exchange plans must also offer one plan available off-exchange. We do have an interactive map on our website that includes the names of the companies, the contact information, and also if it's an HMO or a PPO type of plan for each specific county that your consumer would be looking at. It provides critical information with that link. Next slide, please. So again, we talked earlier about the requirements around an insurance contract. The laws and regulations apply to all insurance policies delivered or issued for delivery in this state. An insurance company has been notified if the company's authorized agent has been notified by or on behalf of the policyholder or insured and provided with sufficient information to identify the policy in question. Every insurer is bound by an act of its agents performed in Wisconsin that is within the scope of that agent's authority. Insurance coverage is issued based on the applicant's representations. Representations are oral or written statements made by the applicant. Wisconsin consumers are provided with privacy protection for medical and financial information. And insurers are also required to notify their insureds of their right to file a complaint with our office regarding problems they may have with their insurance. That notice is required once for each policy or certificate issued by the insurer. Next slide, please. Continuing on with insurance contracts. Regarding the notice of claim, proof of loss is to be furnished to the insurer as reasonably as possible and within 1 year after the time it was required by the policy. For prompt settlement, unless otherwise provided by Wisconsin law, subject to any interest payment, an insurer must promptly pay most insurance claims within 30 days. A mistake in most circumstances, unless otherwise provided. General contract law applies to mistakes in insurance contracts. Any of the following done without just cause and with such regularity as to indicate a general business practice constitute an unfair claims method or practice. It happens when it's failure to promptly acknowledge pertinent communications with respect to claims arising from insurance policies, failing to promptly provide the necessary claims forms, instructions, and reasonable assistance to insureds and claimants, failure to attempt in good faith to effectuate fair and equitable settlements of claims in which liability has become reasonably clear, and knowingly misrepresenting to a claimant pertinent facts or policy provisions. The right to return a policy. Each line of insurance has a period of time for which consumers have the right to return a policy without penalty. As we've discussed, life insurance has a 30-day after delivery for a full refund, but only when the policy sold as a replacement of the existing policy. For health insurance, we talk about having a 10-day after receiving it. The right to return must be printed on or attached to the first page of the policy. Although an insurer may cancel a policy for non-payment of premiums, a consumer is entitled to a grace period for the month payment of any premium due. A consumer should always check their policy to see if their insurer includes a grace policy provision, and a policy issued under the ACA and using the advanced premium tax credit will have a slightly different grace period as governed by federal law. If you disagree with your insurer's determination, you do have the right to appeal through a grievance. A grievance is any dissatisfaction with an insurer offering a health benefit plan or administration of a health benefit plan that is expressed in writing to the insurer by or on behalf of an insured. All insurers that issue health benefit plans must develop an internal grievance process. Independent review is the process in which an outside expert provides a second look at a benefit determination. The independent review process provides an insurer with an opportunity to have a medical professional who has no connection to their health plan to review the dispute. The IRO assigns the dispute to a clinical peer reviewer who is an expert in the treatment of disputed determination. The IRO has the authority to determine whether the treatment should be covered by the health plan, and the reviewer is not affiliated with the insured, the medical provider, or the insurer, and conducts an independent and unbiased review of the claim. Next slide, please. As we've talked about, the definition of risk relating to insurance is the uncertainty of a financial loss. Risk tolerance is the amount of risk willing and wanting by one to take on by themselves or can afford to take on for themselves. Insurance is defined as a transference of risk. The insurance agreement is a contract and governed by contract law. The basic elements of a contract are an offer of coverage, acceptance of the coverage, consideration, also known as money, and an intention to create a legal relationship. Next slide, please. Long before the ACA and HIPAA, Wisconsin was a leader in consumer protections. The next couple of slides discuss the mandated benefits that must be offered by health insurers to Wisconsin consumers. Here is just a brief overview of each one of these benefits. Disabled children. Health insurance covering dependent children must provide coverage beyond age 26 while the child is primarily dependent on the insured for support and maintenance. Insurers, though, can require proof of that child's disability. Home health care. This provides coverage for the usual and customary fees for at least 40 home health care visits per year. Home health care can include intermediate home nursing care, home health aid services, various types of therapy, medical supplies, and medication prescribed under the home care plan. Skilled nursing care. Health insurance covering hospital expenses must cover at least 30 days of skilled nursing care to patients who enter a licensed skilled nursing facility within 24 hours after discharge from a hospital. Coverage may be limited to care that is medically necessary as certified by the attending physician. Kidney disease and transplants. Insurance covering hospital expenses must provide inpatient and outpatient treatment of kidney disease, including dialysis, transplantation, and donor-related services. Coverage for newborns. Health insurance must provide coverage from the moment of birth for a newborn child of the insured. The newborn shall receive the same coverage on the policy that is provided for any child covered or eligible for coverage under that policy. Policies may require notification of the child's birth and payment of any additional premium within 60 days after that birth. Adopted children. A health insurance policy covering dependent children must also cover adopted children and children placed for adoption by the same terms and conditions as any other child. Coverage for grandchildren. Health insurance providing coverage for any child of the insured shall provide the same coverage for all children of that child until that child reaches the age of 18. Diabetic supplies and equipment. Health insurance covers expenses for the treatment of diabetes, shall also provide coverage for insulin, fusion pumps, other equipment and supplies, insulin and other prescription medications, and diabetic self-management education programs. Insurers may apply the same exclusions, limitations, deductibles, and coinsurance provisions applied to any other covered expense. Maternity benefits. If a group health policy provides maternity coverage for anyone covered under the policy, it must provide coverage for all persons covered underneath the policy. Mammograms. Women who are age 50 to 65 must be covered for annual mammograms, and women between ages 45 and 49 with 2 examinations by low dose mammography. Coverage is required regardless of whether the woman has shown any symptoms. And lastly, HIV. Any health insurance providing coverage of prescription medication shall provide coverage for each FDA-approved drug prescribed by the insured's physician for the treatment of HIV infection or any illness or medical condition arising from or related to HIV infection, subject to deductibles and copay that would generally apply to any other prescriptions. Next slide, please. Hearing aids. This is required to provide coverage for hearing aids, cochlear implants, and related treatment prescribed by a physician or a licensed audiologist for children under 18 years of age, and the child must be certified as being deaf or hearing impaired. This is also subject to any cost sharing provisions. Contraceptives. This is required to provide coverage for contraceptives prescribed by a healthcare provider. Cancer clinicals. Health insurance is required to provide coverage of routine medical services for the treatment of cancer provided to an insured in a clinical cancer trial if the services would be covered under the policy if the insured were not enrolled in a cancer clinical trial. However, insurance is not required to cover the cost of the treatment or the drug the trial is studying. Dependents. Health insurance covering dependent children must provide coverage to an adult child of the insured if the child is age 26. Mental health. Health insurance providing coverage for inpatient hospital or outpatient treatment must provide coverage of inpatient hospital services, outpatient services, and transitional treatment arrangements for the treatment of nervous and mental disorders and substance use disorders. Coverage cannot be more restrictive for coverage of the treatment plan of mental health disorders than or substance use conditions than the most common or frequent type of treatment limitations. Lead poisoning. This is required to provide coverage for blood tests for children under the age of 6 according to screening protocols established by the Department of Health Services. TMJ. A policy providing coverage for any diagnostic or surgical procedure involving a bone, joint, muscle, or tissue are required to provide coverage for diagnostic procedures and medically necessary surgical or non-surgical treatment for the correction of TMJ disorders. Breast reconstruction. Insurance providing coverage for a mastectomy is required to provide coverage of breast reconstruction of the affected tissue incident to a mastectomy. Dental care. This is required to provide coverage for charges incurred and anesthetics provided in conjunction with dental care for a child under the age of 5, or an individual has a chronic disability, or lastly, an individual has a medical condition requiring hospitalization or general anesthesia for dental care. Immunizations of children. This provides coverage for a dependent of an insured for appropriate and necessary immunizations for children under the age of 6. Autism. Coverage is required for the treatment of autism spectrum disorders, including autism disorder, Asperger's syndrome, and pervasive developmental disorders not otherwise specified. And lastly, student on medical leave. Health insurance providing coverage for a person as a dependent of the insured because the person is a full-time student shall provide the dependent coverage for if the person is due to a medical necessary leave of absence from school, he or she ceases to become a full-time student. Next slide, please. And now I will pass this on to Sharon.
Good morning again. This slide describes some contingent mandated benefits. And what we mean by contingent is just that the mandate sets up an if-then requirement. For eye drops, every health insurance policy that provides coverage of prescription eye drops shall cover a refill of the prescription eye drops if the requested refill does not exceed the number of refills allowed by the prescription. For oral chemotherapy, health insurance covering injected or intravenous chemo and oral chemo is prohibited from requiring a higher copayment, deductible, or coinsurance amount for oral than is required for injected or intravenous. For colorectal cancer, health insurance covering any diagnostic or surgical procedure is required to cover colorectal cancer examinations and lab tests for any insured who is 50 years of age or older, or any insured who is under 50 years of age and at risk for colorectal cancer. Chiropractors, nurse practitioners, and optometrists are required based on services covered. The insurer cannot discriminate about the services the provider is offering so long as that provider is operating within the scope of their license. So, for example, a chiropractor should not be administering an eye exam to their patient unless they're licensed to do so. Next slide, please. We've already discussed some of these issues. Here are some of the key practices that our office monitors. An advertisement should not exaggerate a benefit and should be sufficiently complete and clear to avoid deception or the tendency to mislead or deceive. It's important that you avoid providing your opinions on companies or products. Educate the consumer so that they can make the best decision possible for themselves or their families. Next slide, please. The following are examples of unfair marketing practices. A, misrepresentation. B, unfair inducements. C, undue influence. Or D, all of the above. The answer is D. These are all types of unfair marketing practices. Next slide, please. Insurers and agents are both responsible for the suitability of a sale, the agent obviously acting on behalf of the insurer. That means that the agent must ask such questions as are necessary to determine that the purchase of such insurance is suitable for the prospective buyer. This is an area where we can see a lot of complaints, especially when it comes to dealing with individuals over 65. Make sure to take as much time as needed to ensure that the person you are talking to understands in full detail what is being offered to them. Per state law, the insurer is responsible for the acts of their appointed agents when it comes to the marketing, selling, and servicing of their products. We had a complaint recently where the consumer provided a written notice to their agent to cancel their policy, and the agent didn't follow through on sending that notice to the company. This wasn't discovered until months later. Normally, the company would not have honored that request, but because their agent had possession of it and did not act in an appropriate time frame, they were required by statute to backdate the cancellation. Next slide, please. We've already discussed some aspects of short-term limited duration plans. These plans are not required to include specific ACA consumer protections. However, some consumers may believe that ACA compliant plans are priced to include unwanted benefits, and that's why they might turn to short-term limited duration. It's important that applicants understand that they may be exposed to additional healthcare costs if they purchase these types of plans. price-sensitive consumers lacking full information about available ACA subsidies may gravitate towards enrolling in short-term limited duration plans, despite the limited coverage protection and high out-of-pocket costs. And in fact, in many cases, short-term limited duration plans may not be the lowest cost option. And I'll note on this point here that there are some new rules that have gone in just recently on short-term limited duration plans to lower the amount of time that a consumer can even be on such a plan. And so that's another factor to take into consideration. In addition, some marketing materials for short-term limited duration plans are sometimes confusing or misleading. Short-term plans that are marketed as alternatives to comprehensive individual coverage based on affordability or any other reason would not be, quote, bridge coverage that meets the definition of a short-term plan. OCI finds that an insurer or agent who represents a short-term plan as compliant with the ACA or as providing more than bridge coverage is engaged in unfair marketing practices. Next slide, please. We've already discussed healthcare sharing ministries. By definition, healthcare sharing ministries are not insurance. These are non-insurance entities in which members share a common set of ethical or religious beliefs and share medical expenses among members. There's no requirement by belonging to a healthcare sharing ministry that anyone within that ministry actually pay the medical bills. It's all voluntary. Next slide, please. States can still apply to become a state-based exchange or partner with the federal government for state partnership exchange. In this form, oversight responsibilities are split between the state and the federal government. There are currently 17 states that have their own ACA state-based exchanges, but Wisconsin is not one of them. Minnesota is the closest state-based exchange, so be very aware where your clients are residing. Next slide, please. Under the Affordable Care Act, an insurance plan sold on the health insurance exchange or marketplace must be certified by the health insurance marketplace. And once certified, it becomes a qualified health plan, QHP. QHPs provide essential health benefits, follow established limits on cost sharing, and meet other requirements. All QHPs meet the Affordable Care Act requirement for having health coverage, known as minimum essential coverage. A health insurance company must also offer a product off exchange to the public. Next slide, please. The ACA requires that all Americans have health insurance that qualifies as minimum essential coverage. Comprehensive individual and small group health plans, most employer-sponsored plans, and government plans like Medicare all qualify as minimum essential coverage. Short-term limited duration health policies and limited benefit plans are not considered minimum essential coverage. Next slide, please. Essential health benefits are a set of healthcare service categories that must be covered by all comprehensive individual and small group health plans subject to the ACA. Again, plans offered on the exchange and off the exchange must cover essential health benefits. Essential health benefits must include items and services within at least the following 10 categories listed on this slide. EHBs also include all the Wisconsin mandated benefits that we talked about a few slides ago. The ACA provides that each state establish an essential health benefit benchmark package to serve as the minimum standard for plans required to offer essential health benefits in the state. Wisconsin plan is called the Wisconsin Essential Health Benefit Benchmark Plan. Next slide, please. The ACA provides a federal tax credit to help individuals and families afford health coverage purchased through the health insurance exchange. The premium tax credit can be taken in advance to offset the monthly insurance premium or in the form of a refund at the end of the year. Cost-sharing reduction is a type of financial assistance available under the ACA. It is based on an individual's income and paid directly to the insurance company. It helps to lower the amount individuals will have to pay out of pocket for deductibles, coinsurance, and copayments. Note that the cost-sharing reduction is only available through the health insurance exchange for individuals with incomes below certain levels and who choose a health plan from the silver medal tier plan category. The ACA also includes permanent reauthorization of the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act, which extends current law and authorizes new programs and services within the Indian Health Service. For American Indians and Alaska Natives, the ACA helps address health disparities by investing in prevention and wellness and increasing access to affordable health coverage. Next slide. After entering in the information about an individual or family, the healthcare.gov website will assist you in the next steps. If the system detects a person who may be eligible for Medicaid, it will forward their information to that state agency for them to contact the consumer. It will also help determine when a consumer is eligible for cost-sharing reductions or advanced premium tax credits. Next slide. As we previously talked about, the ACA provides the federal tax credit and also cost-sharing reductions. Wisconsin insurers also offer plans off the federal exchange. These may have similar coverage and can be less costly. Next slide, please. As previously stated, a contract between a health insurance company and a consumer is where the company agrees to provide coverage according to the language in the policy in exchange for premiums paid and any out-of-pocket costs paid by the consumer. Make sure to understand yourself the frequent terms that relate to health insurance policies. These are terms like deductibles, coinsurance, copayments, HMOs, PPOs, etc. These are all terms that you must be confident in explaining to a consumer. Next slide. Cost sharing mainly includes three different terms: coinsurance, copayments, and deductibles. Coinsurance is the percent of a billed service that the insured is responsible for paying. For example, 10% coinsurance for durable medical equipment means that the insured would be responsible for 10% of what the equipment is billed to the insurance company. A copayment is a set flat fee that the insured is required to pay, for example, each time that they have an appointment. Deductibles are fixed dollar amounts that the insured must pay before the insurance policy will begin to pay for covered services. The insured will need to read the policy or summary of benefits and coverage to understand what payments do and don't count towards the deductible. Sometimes copayments do not accumulate towards the deductible, and sometimes they will. Next slide, please. Understanding the concepts of cost sharing is key to balancing affordability of the premiums on the one hand, and then on the other hand, the overall out-of-pocket expenses that the consumer might face. Again, taking the time to explain these possibilities to consumers, will be key in educating them to make the best possible decision on what plan they are going to purchase. Next slide, please. We've already touched on this summary of benefits. And again, as we discussed before, this is a sample of a summary of benefits that can be found on healthcare.gov. And this is just a brief snapshot of a plan's important features. Next slide, please. As we have touched on previously, HMOs offer the least flexibility, but usually have the lowest monthly costs. EPOs are a bit more flexible and usually cost more than HMOs. And PPOs, or preferred provider organizations, offer the most flexibility, but typically can be the most expensive. Next slide, please. We've attached on the first two bullet points in previous slides. To control the cost of prescription medications, the Wisconsin legislature recently passed a law requiring pharmacy benefit managers, or PBMs, to be licensed and regulated by OCI. The goal of the oversight is to increase transparency, control costs, and protect consumers. PBMs increase a patient's access to medications by negotiating directly with drug manufacturers or wholesalers. Next slide, please. Perhaps we separated our slides, but here's another part of the schedule of benefits that we were talking about, the slide back. Let's go to the next one, please. These are the provisions, limitations and exclusions, are the provisions often overlooked by consumers because they don't think such issues or circumstances will ever happen to them or their family. So it's really important that they're familiar with what's actually limited or excluded under their policy. Exclusions can occur when a company feels a treatment or therapy is not medically necessary. And as we've mentioned before, OCI cannot make determinations of the necessity of a treatment. Next slide, please. Oh, and here's some more schedule of benefits. Next slide after that is the same. And then if we could go to polling slide 4, please. Which of the following should be considered when selecting a health insurance plan? A, premium. B, cost sharing. C, network and coverage. And D, all of the above. And the answer, as you might expect, is D, all of the above. And now, congratulations, you've completed our last polling question. Next slide, please. A consumer might benefit from a refresher on some of the elements of commercial insurance plan design. These things we've been talking about, like premiums, cost sharing, and differences in benefits and provider networks. Some individuals may think of reviewing the provider directories or search tools of marketplace plans before enrolling to ensure that important providers are in that network. As a navigator, you are trained to assist consumers to look at all their healthcare options through the marketplace, which includes conveying accurate, unbiased information so they can make informed decisions. This also includes completing eligibility and enrollment forms as well. Taking the time to educate and raise awareness about the Federal Exchange is vital to being successful every day in your role as navigator. Next slide, please. And now we've come to the end of our presentation, and here once again is our website and a list of some information and resources provided on the website. We'd like to thank you for having us provide this information and wish you best of luck in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for presenting today with us, Sharon and Shelley. We really appreciate you being here. It looks like we have about 2 minutes for some Q&A. So if there are questions, please go ahead and put them in the question and answer. Give a little more time here before we sign off. All right. So I am not seeing anything in the Q&A. So we will begin again at 11 a.m. with a presentation on special enrollment periods with Adam Vance Bankren from Covering Wisconsin. So again, we will see everyone at 11, and thank you so much for joining us.